Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethlie.
We are the Youngs. We're glad you've joined us today. Over the last few weeks, we've been doing a series called Investing in Your Marriage. And we've talked about roles and responsibilities, and we've talked about being best friends. And last week, we started what we consider one of our favorite parts of this discussion, and that is we started talking about romance.
Right.
And we're sure glad you've joined us. And we'll be dealing with the Song of Solomon today.
Right.
And,
so if you have little
good reminder
ones,
here.
Yes, if you have little ones, just like last week, you may want to pop in those earbuds or listen later, or just be prepared to answer some questions.
Yeah, and it's not wrong. We're trying to be wise here. I remember once we were in the van traveling to a meeting, and we were listening to one of our friends who was preaching on marriage and the bedroom, and normally our children are reading and playing games and have their earbuds in.
It was Dr. Tice.
And Dr. Dave Tice and our good friend. And so we stopped on the side of the road. I forget why we stopped, but we stopped, and we were just going to finish the last few minutes of it.
Well, we were getting ready to, head into a camp.
Oh, yes, that's right. And so we wanted to finish it before we got to the camp. It was very intriguing, very thought-provoking, very helpful. So we pull over, and Bethlie and I are just listening, and then it dawned on us that our children are all scattered throughout this 15-passenger van, leaning forward, very intrigued and listening.
Very quiet.
And we just finished the series and had a little conversation with the kids.
It was good. It was good to open it up.
It was incredible, and they all remember that.
They do.
They remember the things they learned in listening to that sermon from our good friend, Dr. Dave. And we're very thankful for that. If you joined us last week, we began talking to you about the biblical basis for human sexuality, and specifically in marriage. God designed His creation with sexual desires, and God designed it to be celebrated, enjoyed inside the boundaries of marriage.
Right.
Anything else is in the Word of God considered sinful.
Right.
That would include homosexuality. That would include pornography. That would include adultery. The entire marriage is the only place where God designed us to enjoy human sexuality.
Right.
And it's a vital, vital, vital part of marriage.
It is.
And so we want to do at least 2 more sessions with you about it. And today we want to just go a little bit further in talking to you about the biblical view.
Yes.
And so last week we looked at Genesis. We looked at Proverbs. We went to 1 Corinthians 7, and we closed out with Hebrews 13. But there's an entire book written about marriage and the celebration of the marriage relationship, and that's the love poem called the Song of Solomon. And it's a book worth your reading.
Yes, it is.
And it's a book worth studying. There's all kinds of views on it. Some believe it's Israel. It's a picture of God's love for Israel, His chosen people. Spurgeon was one who famously referred to the Song of Solomon frequently about Christ's love for His church and the bride's love for Christ. And those aren't wrong. Right. It's not wrong to spiritualize texts. But the Song of Solomon can be taken very literally as an epic love poem of a young man and a young lady madly in love with each other.
Right.
And, of course, it was written by the wisest king who ever lived, King Solomon, who, strangely enough, made some real mistakes and had some massive failures in these areas.
Yes.
And yet what he says in his inspired song here is amazing. And so let's just back up here and get started and remind our audience that God designed us to enjoy sexuality with one partner for a lifetime. Human sexuality is so important that it's designed by God to be shared with only one other person.
Right.
And that's our spouse. And we find that in the idea of the one flesh of Genesis 2 and Ephesians 5. For this cause man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two of them become one flesh.
Right.
There's the plan. It's one man and one woman. That's God's plan. That's God's definition of marriage. And the permanence is it's for a lifetime.
Right.
And be careful that you're wise about that. It's easy in our culture for people to think we don't love each other anymore. We're better off separated. We're better off divorced.
Right.
And there can be times when a couple does need to separate to work things through.
Right.
Divorce is very rare if it's permitted at all in the Bible. That's a very debated statement. I'm aware of that.
Right.
But God's plan is that we work together on our marriages so that we can enjoy a marriage that's a lifetime.
Right.
An entire lifetime. So let's jump into the Song of Solomon, and let's take some time here this today and talk about the Song of Solomon and the view you find of the marriage relationship, the romance. That's our word. And it jumps right in verse 1. Read verse 1 for us there, sweetheart.
The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's.
And jump into
And
verse 2.
verse 2, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine.
This is just right up, jumps right in.
Yes,
Kiss me with the mouth.
Just kiss me.
And this is, his love is better than wine. And wine was vitally important in that day, a day of no refrigeration.
Right.
And a day with with a lack of medical, blessings that we have today. So wine was so important. It was a major portion of their culture, the fruit of the vine. And so she just jumps right in. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. She invites him. This is interesting that she invites it. She's looking for the romance from her man.
Right.
And what a good thing to even stop here and point out that God's view of romance is not one-sided.
That's right.
It's not that, the bedroom is something a guy wants and good luck, ladies, that you have to put up with this thing. No. She's all in.
She is.
And she's for him. And they just jump right in, and she even invites him to draw her. She says, draw me in verse 4. And she's just inviting him, come to me. Let's fall in love.
Right. She's being flirty. She's being inviting. Yeah. She's being playful, as we talked about last time.
Playful and happy.
Yes.
It's okay. Don't get to the place in your marriage where you're like, oh my word, it's not us. You don't have to be us, and you don't have to be like anybody else, but your marriage is unique to you, and the two of you should be in love.
Right.
And it is true that sometimes we're around couples, and the way they respond to each other can be a little gross. I mean, you're like, oh my word. We met an elderly couple at one of our conferences, and they were over the top.
Well, they were honeymooners.
They were honeymooning, and everybody knew it. my children, when they were younger, used to love the movie Brother Bear, and there's one part where all the bears are talking, and the one's like, you're just gorgeous, sure, and one
you're
of those
gorgeous.
Like,
no, you're gorgeous.
You're gorgeous. And finally, one of the bears says, "Get a cave." And so, I heard those words when I was with this couple at this camp. Get a cave. But here's the most amazing thing. This in the Song of Solomon, they are in love, and the Song of Solomon is really showing us that God designed in marriage that we enjoy sexuality with all of our heart, with all of our senses, with our whole life.
Right.
It's to be celebrated. It's to be enjoyed.
Right.
And he talks about all the senses, the hearing, the seeing, the smelling, the tasting, the touching.
Right.
It's all about the bedroom.
Yes.
It's all about being in love with each other.
Right.
And he says things like, she says in chapter 2, I'm the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. Notice there's beauty there. As a lily among thorns. So is my love among the daughters, as the apple tree among the trees of the wood. She's talking about fragrance. In the 4th verse, he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. And there's no doubt here they're in love. And listen, even to verse 6, it's a little almost risque if you're not wise about it. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. These two are in love. They are kissing. They are flirting. They are all in. And she even mentions about hearing his voice in verse 8, the voice of my beloved. And the idea there is she just couldn't wait to even hear his voice.
Right.
There's massive romance in this passage. My favorite part of the Song of Solomon is the 4th chapter. And it's the chapter that in the culture we live in, it makes no sense to us.
No.
But they're so in love. She says, behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. He says, rather, thou hast dove's eyes within thy locks. That's just a weird phrase, even. Dove's eyes? Those are beady little things. Thy hair is as a flock of goats. What a compliment. And in the 2nd verse, thy teeth are like a flock of sheep that are even shorn, which came up from the washing, whereof every one bare twins, and none is barren among them.
Well, that's good.
She's commenting on the fact that
He's commenting.
He's commenting that she has a full set of teeth.
That's good.
He's very happy about that. Her lips are like a thread of scarlet. There's something even today that's considered romantic with red lipstick.
Right. Mm-hmm.
When my wife kisses a note with red lipstick, and all that's romantic. Thy speech is comely, the way they talk to each other. This one is a funny verse, verse 4. Thy neck is like the tower of David builded for an armory. And I always thought, man, she has quite a neck.
It's just impressive.
It's very impressive. And then listen to verse 5. Thy two breasts are like two young roes that are twins. Notice he's commenting. He's complimenting her.
Yes.
One commentator pointed out that he starts with her hair and her eyes, her face. Mm-hmm. He moves to her breasts. He's talking about her breasts, and he stops. Mm-hmm. He's describing her, and then he stops, which is probably great wisdom on the writer of Scripture here.
Yes.
He says, "Thou art fair, my love. There is no spot in thee." Mm-hmm. Notice all that's going on here. There is definitely hearing. They talk and express their love and their desires.
Right.
So let's just start right there.
And they express what they love about each other.
They're just very specific.
Yes.
Very,
I
very
love
specific.
you. I think your eyes are gorgeous. I love your smile.
Absolutely.
I love your dimples.
I love it all. I'm all in. And,
yes.
and notice, you'll read through the Song of Solomon, notice how specific they are.
Yes.
And you need to be specific with each other.
Definitely.
I love this about you.
And this is something as specific as they are. This is something that is indeed in the bedroom. It's intimate between a husband and wife.
Yeah.
Not something that you would comment on necessarily when you're in front of your children in the kitchen. But there is nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, babe, you look hot today,"
Sure.
in front of your children.
And that lets your kids know that, wow, mom and dad really love each other.
Yes.
And there's security in that for your children. And
Absolutely.
there's also encouragement in that for your spouse.
Yes, it is.
And so there's the speaking
Mm-hmm.
and the hearing. There is the seeing. He admires her beauty and describes her very specifically, and she admires his masculinity and describes why she likes his masculinity. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of effort going into this romance.
Yes.
Which we probably ought to stop and comment on, because we live in a culture in which it seems like we're always having to let something go. Yeah, we can't keep up with our schedule, and we're overwhelmed, and we're distracted, and we're frustrated, and we're busier than we really ought to be.
Right.
And many times in a marriage relationship, the thing that goes in the busyness and the frustrations and the irritations is the romance of a marriage.
Right.
We see that a lot.
It's just something that is quick, and it doesn't take any effort whatsoever, and it's just okay.
Yeah,
we just need to.
Let's get this over with.
Whatever.
Let's be done.
Yes.
But here is a whole book written to show you the celebration, the preparation, the communication, the thought processes. They hear, they see.
I was going to say this with the being able to see each other in our culture, especially women, but even men, feel ashamed of their bodies. And our Bible tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Sure. But when you compare yourself to all the images that you see on billboards or on TV, movies, whatever,
Instagram,
you really can feel inferior, especially a lady in the bedroom. And I appreciate that David is always appreciative of me. He always makes me feel beautiful. In the bedroom, outside the bedroom. And we've had 5 babies. We've had more children than that have gone on to heaven. And, you know, a mom body is not the body that we got married with. But I can be secure in our romantic relationship because David does comment on what he thinks is beautiful.
And husbands, that's a good point for you to hear, for you to think about. So many times we don't take the time in our culture to communicate romance.
Right.
To say it. To compliment her eyes, her beauty, her skin.
Yes.
And just to look to all the reasons. She compliments him even in his masculinity and his leadership.
I was going to say, and vice versa with your husband. You know, the new meme thing is about the dad bod. And your husband can feel insecure that he doesn't have his 6-pack anymore. But, you know, you can just build him up and say, no, you look more like a man today than you did when we first got married.
And I always think that's maybe really stretching things there.
No, it's true.
And when you have teenagers, they help point out those matters. My son took a picture of my dog sitting beside me and said, "Look, it's two pooches." He was making fun of my dog and my stomach.
I didn't know
and posted that on Instagram.
Oh, no, that's terrible. But yes, you can point out all the gray hair and the wrinkles and the sagging and
you can
what.
make fun or you can celebrate them.
Yes.
And Bethlie will often tell me, "Wow, the gray in your beard makes you look so wise and
yes,
and
very attractive."
And very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a matter of taking the time to celebrate romance in your marriage. It's
Yes.
a lifestyle. And you find in the Song of Solomon, they're hearing, they're talking, they're seeing. You find a lot of fragrance in the Song of Solomon.
Yes.
They continually add fragrance to their body, to their bed.
Yes.
They take care of themselves for each other.
Right.
And that's notice that's not an afterthought. It's not a matter of it just happened. No, there's on purpose here. He prepared his bedroom for her, and she prepared her bedroom. They prepare their bodies. They use fragrance. They smell good.
That's important. You can even talk about that in today's culture, that your bedroom, if you are married, your bedroom should not be the drop-off point for every load of laundry, for all of the piles of mail, for all of that, because especially in a woman's mind, you get very distracted very easily. And if all you're seeing is mess, and
jobs,
piles of this and piles of that in your bedroom, then you are not going to feel very romantic whatsoever.
You get the idea here that they took advantage of making their bedroom romantic.
It should be very special, and it should be decorated in a way that makes both of you feel at home and relaxed.
Sure. So that's a whole portion of what they're doing here. There's even tasting, and I want to be wise about this, but there is definitely the sense of taste in the fact that they taste each other via kissing. The idea of taste is shown in there's exploration with their lips. It's it's God gives us senses to enjoy in our marriage.
Right.
And there's a lot of touching. It's all over the book of Song of Solomon.
Yes.
They caress,
the kissing,
they embrace, they hold, they explore, they make love.
Yes.
And the point we've been trying to really show you in these first two sessions on romance is that God is very pro-romance in your marriage.
Right.
And there can be all kinds of issues you're dealing with. Maybe some things have happened in your past that caused the idea of the bedroom to be a real matter of uneasiness for you, or maybe you're very fearful about it.
Right.
Well, don't live with that. Get help about that.
Right. Get counseling.
Counseling is available, and
it is.
And talk with your spouse about it so your spouse understands your concerns, your fears. And when your spouse comes to you about something like that, you receive it well, and you work with your spouse through those fears.
Your marriage relationship is very important, so that while that you cannot forget any hurt or brokenness that happened to you earlier in life, your marriage relationship is worth it to get the help.
It is. And you know, there's odd things. Maybe you're, as a guy, have had issues with pornography, and the result of that is that it has affected your bedroom. Well, you need to work your way through that. You need to be open. You need to get help. You need to find out how to handle your thought processes and change your thinking from the garbage of the world, if you will, to the focus of your marriage. So this is extremely, extremely important.
Right.
For you that just maybe to add on here, I would urge you to read through the Song of Solomon.
Yes.
I would urge you to read chapter 4 especially, and just notice how that he's preparing for their bedroom. He says in the 9th verse, "Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes." He says, "How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse. How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thine ointment than all spices." He talks about her words. "Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue. The smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed." And then he talks about fruits and odors. "Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates, pleasant fruits, camphire, spikenard, saffron, calamus, cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh, and aloes, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters." And in verse 16 is the culmination of their bedroom event. "Awake, O north wind, and come thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. It is a beautiful illustration that everything they're doing, and they're talking, they're flirting, they're praising, they're building, they're listening, they're touching, they're
getting ready for one another,
cleaning up and smelling well, is all for the bedroom. It's a definite illustration.
Well, and it points to a lifestyle.
Yes.
It does point to a lifestyle. And you know, when we're talking about getting ready for one another, you can totally, as a mom, get into the, I never wear makeup and I always have my hair in a messy bun and I always have on the same sweatpants that I've worn for the whole week. And you know what? Your husband's probably going to take you no matter what. If that's how you look all the time, he just loves you and he's going to want to kiss on you. But there are times where you should bring out the vavoom factor. You should take a shower, wash your hair.
The vavoom factor.
Use some Bath and Body Works and dress up a little bit.
Sure. And gentlemen, the same thing is true. Sometimes guys, run through their day and jump into bed and take a shower. Always, Solomon here points out that he has prepared himself. Yes. He's clean. He smells well for her. He looks good for her.
It's a lot easier to kiss a man that smells good.
I wouldn't know, but I'll take your word for that. I'm gonna go with you on that one.
Okay.
and let's just add one more thing here. If you are getting ready to be married and you're getting ready for a honeymoon, so many times in our culture and in the church, it seems like couples, they spend hours preparing vows, planning what they're going to wear, planning the music.
It's all about the wedding.
Preach.
All about the wedding.
Don't overlook that for a Christian couple, the honeymoon is a beautiful and sacred and holy beginning to a lifetime of romance.
Right.
And so communicate that. You want to be wise about it. There are books you could read. If you're not sure, you can talk with your pastor or a ministry leader, or reach out to us via our podcast website. We'd recommend books to you, but prepare for your honeymoon. Don't let that be an afterthought. Don't let that be, oh yeah, we're now going to be sharing a room together. Plan for it, and think it through. And as you're getting closer and closer to the date of your honeymoon, the beginning of your marriage relationship, you do need to be aware, okay, what is going to happen on our honeymoon, and what are our expectations?
Yes, talk about your expectations.
And prepare for it as far as, buy candles and even lingerie can be bought.
Yes.
You have to be very wise about it because so much of that today in some of the stores is very risque and inappropriate in the images.
The pictures that are in the stores, yes.
But as far as buying stuff for one another, that's appropriate. And it's just an important matter. And sometimes as a couple gets started, there are issues that happen in the bedroom that nobody's ever talked to them about, and they've never communicated, and then they feel awkward about it. But if there's an issue in which you can't consummate a marriage, or there's an issue in which something's not working right here, don't wrestle your way through several years of frustration.
No.
Get help.
Get help. If you don't have... I would suggest that all couples get premarital counseling. But if your premarital counseling does not include about romance and about your honeymoon and about talking with each other and meeting expectations and things like that, then I would try to find an older couple in your church that are fun and flirty, and go out with them and say, hey, can we just talk?
Sure.
Or maybe talk separately. The girl talk with the wife and the guy talk with the husband. I think that would be entirely appropriate.
Sure. So here's what we're trying to say to you. God is pro the marriage relationship.
Yes.
And God is pro the bedroom. And so we've tried to show you a biblical basis, a biblical foundation that lets you know that in Christianity, we're not anti-human sexuality.
Right.
We believe it is designed by God for a marriage relationship, and that it is a beautiful thing. And I hope you'll study the Word of God and you will come to the same conclusion.
Yes.
And invest in your marriage. That's what we're talking about in this series.
It is so worth it.
It makes your marriage wonderful. And as Bethlie said at the close of our last session, our last time with you, the last podcast, It is one part of marriage that is unique to your marriage above all others. I know that a friend of hers told her one time, an older mentor lady said, anybody can cook for your husband, anybody can clean, and somebody else can iron his clothes.
Right.
But the bed, sexual desires and drives that we have can only biblically be met by our spouse.
Yes.
And that means we're very important to each other.
We are.
And so that's enough for today. Let's close, and I hope you'll join us next week for the final installment of this particular series on investing in your marriage.
Absolutely.
This is Keeping It Young, and we're so glad you've joined us today. Thank you so much for listening.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production. All rights reserved.